Now, today's video is one that I honestly did not expect to get this messy, but here we are. We are talking about Kandi and Todd Tucker's divorce, and if you've been loosely following this situation, just know that things have officially taken a turn. This divorce is no longer quiet, no longer behind the scenes, and no longer just a matter of two people deciding to go their separate ways. At this point, it is getting nasty, and it is getting nasty over the two things that tend to blow divorces all the way up: money and kids. And anytime money and children are involved, emotions run high, accusations start flying, and everything becomes way more complicated than it ever needed to be. That is exactly what we are seeing play out here, especially now that new court documents have been filed. In today's video, I want to walk you through what Kandi is alleging in these documents, what Todd is asking for, and why, after reading everything carefully, I have some serious questions about how their household may have been operating long before the divorce was ever filed. Because one thing about legal documents is that the wording is intentional, and when you slow down and really read what's being said and what's not being said, it can tell you a lot. Before we get into all of that though, if you are watching and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This year actually marks my 10-year anniversary here on YouTube, and I truly appreciate everyone who has been rocking with me, whether you're new here or you've been watching for years. Alright, let's get into it. So before we even get to the newest court filings, we need to talk about something that Todd had already put on the table earlier in this divorce process, because it sets the tone for everything we're seeing now. In previous court documents, Todd made it clear that he is seeking temporary and permanent legal custody of the children, along with final decision-making authority. Not only that, but he also requested primary physical custody. That means he is not just asking to co-parent or split time evenly, he is asking to be the primary custodial parent in every sense of the word. When that information first came out, a lot of people immediately started questioning his motives. And let's be honest, those questions weren't coming out of nowhere, because in many divorce cases, when one parent pushes hard for primary custody, especially when finances are involved, people naturally wonder if child support is part of the equation. Now, traditionally, we tend to see a very familiar dynamic in divorce situations. Often, the man is the primary breadwinner, the woman may have stepped back from her career to raise the kids, and when the marriage ends, the woman seeks custody because she has been the primary caregiver. In those cases, child support is typically paid by the higher-earning parent. But this situation doesn't fit neatly into that traditional box at all. Here, Todd is positioning himself as the primary caretaker, while Kandi is pushing back on that narrative entirely. At the same time, Kandi is clearly the higher earner in this marriage, and Todd is not some stay-at-home parent with no income. Since being with Kandi, Todd has launched and operated multiple businesses, which immediately complicates the idea that he was home full-time raising the kids. So already we're dealing with a situation where the usual roles feel reversed, and that's why people are paying such close attention to what's being alleged on both sides. Now, let's get into the most recent court documents, because this is where things really start to heat up. Kandi, through her attorney, has filed a motion for a temporary hearing regarding parenting time and child support. According to the documents, this hearing is supposed to take place today, and it's meant to address how things will function while the divorce is still pending. The documents confirm that Kandi and Todd share 2 minor children, and from there, Kandi begins laying out her concerns in detail. And I want to be very clear here, I'm not skimming this, I'm not paraphrasing loosely, I actually read through these documents, because when it comes to situations involving children, context matters. One of the sections that immediately stood out to me was Section 3, because it lays out the financial realities of raising their children, and then makes a very serious allegation about Todd's role in all of it. According to the filing, the children have significant monthly expenses, which include but are not limited to nanny and childcare costs, tuition-related expenses, extracurricular activities, birthday parties, medical expenses, travel expenses, and general daily maintenance and living costs. Now, none of that is surprising. These are children being raised in a certain lifestyle, and those costs add up quickly. What is surprising is what comes next. The document states that Todd has failed to contribute financially to the maintenance and support of the children's needs, leaving the sole responsibility on the petitioner and mother.
And this is where I had to stop and reread because, again, legal wording matters. The document does not say that Todd was paying and then stopped. It does not say that he recently cut off support. It simply says that he has failed to contribute financially. So naturally, my question became, has this always been the case? Has one parent been covering everything this entire time? Because if this was a situation where Todd used to pay and suddenly stopped, that would typically be spelled out very clearly. Instead, the wording suggests a pattern, not a recent change. The filing goes on to say that, under the law, it is in the best interest of the children for Todd to contribute financially on a consistent basis. It also emphasizes that Todd is a self-employed entrepreneur who possesses both the earnings and the earning capacity to support his children financially. In other words, this is not about inability. This is not about someone being unemployed or financially dependent. According to the filing, this is about choice. I already know what some people are going to say because I've seen it before. There will be people who argue, well, Kandi is a multi-millionaire. Why does Todd need to contribute? But that argument completely misses the point. Child support and shared financial responsibility are not about need in the sense of survival. They're about fairness, responsibility, and the well-being of the children. Kids benefit when both parents are invested, not just emotionally, but financially as well. Just because one parent can afford to cover everything doesn't mean they should have to, especially when the other parent is capable of contributing. And if Todd truly wants primary custody and decision-making authority, then contributing financially should not even be a question. The documents also state that Todd does not pay the mortgage or expenses associated with the marital residence, which we already know is Kandi's home. But then the filing takes an even sharper turn. However, Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker are reportedly closing in on a final divorce settlement, and according to insiders, the terms are leaning more in Todd's direction than many people anticipated. Not dramatically, not explosively, but noticeably. And when you understand the protections Kandi had going into this marriage, that shift becomes even more interesting. Because this isn't a case of someone being caught off guard or legally outmaneuvered. This is a case of someone choosing a path that prioritizes something other than maximum advantage. Now, let's talk about the prenup, because that's where the foundation of this entire conversation really starts. Kandi had a detailed, serious prenuptial agreement in place before this marriage ever became official. This was not a casual document. It was not something drafted quickly or vaguely. It spelled out, line by line, what was hers, what would remain separate, and how certain assets would be treated. That prenup was designed to protect her fully, and from everything we know, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. So when you look at the settlement that's coming together now, and you notice decisions that don't strictly follow the most aggressive interpretation of that prenup, it tells you something important. Because when someone with airtight protection starts saying, all right, let's do it this way instead, that's not about confusion or weakness. That's about intention. It signals that the goal has shifted from winning on paper to finishing cleanly in real life. And that's where things get interesting. Because this settlement isn't about squeezing every possible advantage out of the situation. It's about ending it with the least amount of irritation, disruption, and ongoing stress. And that mindset becomes very clear when you look at the terms that made everyone stop mid-scroll. Kandi reportedly agreed to pay Todd $4,000 a month in child support. On its own, that number already caught people's attention, but what really shifted the conversation was the housing arrangement. According to sources, Todd will be allowed to continue living in Kandi's Atlanta home until their children reach adulthood. And let's be very clear about what that means. This is not a shared marital asset that was purchased together during the relationship. This is her home Kandi owned long before this marriage ever had a plot twist. This is her property tied to her name, her history, and her financial footprint. And yet, part of this settlement involves her allowing Todd to remain there, maintaining stability for the children and continuity in their environment. Todd isn't just co-parenting under this arrangement. He's settling into a version of life that offers stability, predictability, and comfort. And honestly, if you're looking at this from his perspective, you take that paperwork, pause long enough to appear thoughtful, and internally recognize that things worked out in your favor. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it's solid.
So the obvious question becomes, why would Kandi agree to this? And the answer, according to multiple sources, has very little to do with money. Kandi is agreeing to these terms because she has no interest in spending her life tangled up in court. She is not about to rearrange her Broadway schedule, her business ventures, her filming commitments, or her travel plans just to argue over every logistical detail of a divorce she has already emotionally exited. At this stage of her life and career, time and peace are more valuable than squeezing every dollar out of a settlement. Fighting every single point would cost her more peace than it would ever save her money. And for someone operating at her level, that's simply not a worthwhile trade. When you're juggling multiple businesses, high-profile projects, and a demanding public image, voluntarily adding chaos isn't just inconvenient, it's pointless. This is the kind of situation where the judge is probably waiting longer for her availability than her glam team does. And when you're that booked and that focused, dragging a divorce out becomes an unnecessary distraction rather than a victory. What's especially interesting is how differently each person is landing as this settlement comes together. The full agreement is expected early next year, and both sides appear committed to maintaining stability for Ace and Blaze, which is important. But beyond that shared goal, the outcomes look very different. Todd is walking away with consistency. He's getting ongoing financial support, long-term housing stability, and a familiar environment for the children. His day-to-day life doesn't drastically change under this arrangement, and in many ways it becomes more predictable. Kandi, on the other hand, is walking away with control. Control over her time, control over her image, control over how she moves into her next chapter. According to insiders, she's already planning to purchase another Atlanta property, signaling that she's not tied to the past or stuck in the space she's leaving behind. She's clearing the clutter, not just physically, but emotionally. She's choosing not to drag old arguments from room to room just because she technically could, and that choice says a lot about where her priorities are now. There's a misconception that winning a divorce means walking away with the most assets or the strictest enforcement of legal protections. But sometimes winning looks like freedom. It looks like not having to explain yourself in court, not having to rearrange your life for depositions, and not having to relive the same arguments over and over again in front of strangers. That's why this settlement feels so telling, because the quiet agreements, the calm compromises, and the lack of public drama are often where the real story lives. These final adjustments are the moments when true intentions slip through, when people stop posturing and start prioritizing what they actually want their lives to look like moving forward. And this settlement, in its calmness, reveals a lot. It reveals someone who values efficiency over conflict, peace over prolonged battle, and forward motion over proving a point. It also reveals someone who is comfortable accepting stability when it's offered. Neither approach is necessarily wrong, but together they paint a very clear picture of why this marriage is ending the way it is. When the final page of this agreement is signed, it may explain more about this breakup than the last season ever did, not because of what's being fought over, but because of what's being let go. According to the documents, Todd does not exercise parenting time with the children on a significant basis, despite what's described as a facade presented on social media. Specifically, the filing references Todd's short daddy daycare videos, suggesting that what's shown online does not reflect what's happening behind the scenes. And we've all seen those posts. We've scrolled through the Instagram. But according to the filing, those moments are curated, brief, and not representative of consistent parenting involvement, which makes it especially interesting and, frankly, confusing that Todd is seeking full legal and physical custody while allegedly not utilizing the parenting time he already has. The documents also allege that since the divorce filing, Todd has intentionally interfered with parenting time. One of the most notable examples mentioned is Christmas break. According to the filing, Todd attempted to prevent the children from traveling to New York to visit Kandi, despite the fact that she had already paid for the travel and provided ample notice. As we know, Kandi is currently performing on Broadway, and spending time with her children during the holidays would be especially meaningful. What makes this allegation even more complicated is that we all saw photos of them together during the holidays. But according to the filing, that does not negate the claim that interference occurred. Because of all of this, the filing requests that the court establish a temporary parenting plan. The goal is to create a clear schedule that allows both parties to exercise parenting time peacefully and consistently while the divorce is ongoing.